procedure and then to the public before they don't want to go through that. If the fire alarm sounds, obviously we know where the exits are and assemble in the car park. So, agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from councillors Cleary, Pope, Mackenzie, Middleton, Rain and Windress.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, questions. There are no public questions this evening. Agenda item 4, the minutes. To approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting the council held on the 6th of October 2022, pages 5 to 16. As chairman of council, I move that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on that day are approved and signed as a correct record. Is that seconded? To the bottom here. Agenda item. Can we vote that that is a true record by general information? So what do you next now? Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, urgent business. There are no items of urgent business this evening. Agenda item 6, declaration of interest. Do any members have any declarations of the members' code of conduct, apart from the usual county council that we know about? You're good on that. Thank you very much. Agenda item 7, there are no announcements this evening. Just for members, I've decided that the exempt material that we have in our packs for items 10 and 12H, we're going to do first, and then we're going to come back to agenda item 8. That's okay. So we have a vote to see the members of the body's in agreement with that. We have the public, I'm afraid, will have to go out while we do these 2 items, I'm afraid. Thank you. Yeah, are we taking the exempt by general information, or we'd like to vote on that? Yeah,
yeah, I'm struggling to understand, Chair, why we're rearranging the agenda in this way. Doesn't seem to make logical sense to me to us to do that.
We can vote on it. That's consensus. Okay, I will vote. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. So those in favour of the agenda being turned around, if you'd like to vote in favour or against, please raise your hand. Thank you.
Because I didn't vote.
Okay. Well, propose that we change the agenda, please. Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Duncan?
No, sorry.
Somebody like to propose that the agenda's changed. Councillor Keel, thank you. And seconder. Councillor Dawson, thank you. I'd like to vote on the change, please. Thank you.
We're not working.
It was.
We started. Chair, so 11 votes for, 5 against and 3 abstentions.
Thank you. So we'll go into consent. So we'll go to the into the consent now, please. So I'm going to propose to go to consent. Councillor Potter and the seconder. Councillor Frank. Yeah. And we'll have a vote for that as well, please. So those who do consent. Input. Somebody like to. Agenda item 8. Agenda item 8, questions on notice. This is one question on notice this evening, and to assist members, the answer to Councillor Duncan's questions have been filled out on an email. Has everybody got a copy of that? Is that correct? You can put it. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a few minutes to digest that first of all, please, and I'll come back to you in a second, Councillor Duncan. Okay.
I submitted this question, which there's 5 parts, through the council's proper procedures. For a question on notice to the chairman, the policy and resources committee, the question that we submitted to her is a public question. As is normal procedure, I'd like to ask that question, and I would like to receive the answer to it in the public forum for the benefit of the public recording. So I'd like to ask my question, and I'd like to receive the answer from the chairman of policy.
You also get that, but I just want members to have a read through this first of all, for their benefit, because it's the first time they've seen it. So I appreciate what you're saying, Councillor Duncan.
Seems quite illogical for me to read the answer before I ask the question.
You'll still have that.
You can sit there and go out.
It's like you will respond. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part A of my question to the Chairman of Policy Resources. Can you please share with all elected councillors a copy of recent legal advice obtained by the council relating to the community infrastructure levy grant scheme?
Thank you for Part A for your lengthy question, Councillor Duncan. And before I answer it, I'd just like to say the reason members were provided with this is because it is quite a substantial question. We felt it would be helpful to members to have the reply. There's a lot to it in writing as well. I'm more than happy to answer verbally as well. So I'm simply going to read, I may make some extra comments, I'm simply going to read the advice that the answers that I have in front of me. So with regard to question 1, I'm referring to Article 253B of Ryedale District Council's Constitution, which governs the access of Ryedale District Council's to information which is legally privileged, as is the case in respect of the information which is the subject matter of this first question. It provides that councillors will have such rights of access to such documents, information, land and buildings at the council as are necessary for the proper discharge of their functions and in accordance with the law. The head of paid service may refuse inspection of documents where the documents are, or in the event of legal proceedings would be, protected by privilege arising out of a solicitor and client relationship. Councillors will not make public information which is confidential or exempt without the consent of the council, or divulge information given in confidence to anyone other than a councillor or officer entitled to know it. For these purposes, confidential and exempt information are defined in the Access to Information Rules in Part 4 of the Constitution. So following consultation with the acting head of paid service, this decision has been taken to restrict access to this legal advice to which you refer. In particular, the advice is particularly sensitive in the context of the discussions we are currently having with North Yorkshire County Council. It is not intended to make contents public at this time. In accordance with the protocols from members' officer relations, you are entitled to take the head of paid service.
Thank you for that response. Just in terms of following this up, for clarity, the answer Councillor gives, no, you are not prepared to share with councillors the legal advice. I'm not asking for the advice given in public. I'm asking for councillor, myself, and everybody else here to be made aware of the legal advice that you have referred to in the recent letter, which I assume you have seen, but you are denying the other 24 members of this council the right to see. Is that correct?
Yes, at this stage, that is correct. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Part B of my question, can you please confirm who provided the advice and the total cost of this advice, the advice of course, which you are denying the right for councillors to see?
Yeah, I think we've got that message, Councillor Duncan. In answer to question 2, Ryedale District Council sought appropriate advice on various aspects of the scheme in order to ensure that it meets all the relevant requirements. DWF Legal have provided advice under the Crown Commercial Services Framework Agreement in this respect, and the fees, excluding that, in connection with this advice to date amounts to £7,971. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Just following up to your answer on that question. The council, of which all of us, we are the council, has spent £7,971 on advice to help inform us to make the right decisions on behalf of the public. Advice, of course, that you will allow us to see. Thank you again for the answer to that question. Part C of my question, can you please confirm details and costs of recent staffing changes to accommodate the SIL grant scheme application process?
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. In response to section C, question C, the post of Economic Development Officer, grade 7, was created for the period from September 2022 to March 2023 as an internal secondment role and was intended at this time to primarily support the delivery of the SIL scheme, but also to deliver a range of other projects within the team, including the second round of the Community Environment Grant Scheme, active travel projects, etc. The post was filled with recruitment of an officer from another team in Ryedale District Council in mid-September. It was originally intended that this role be funded through the use of the local government reorganisation backfill monies. However, as the current post holder's substantive post was not backfilled, was previously operating at the top of grade 6, the staffing changes implemented are currently operating at cost neutral to the authority. And no local government reorganisation backfill monies or other Ryedale District Council funds are yet to use or utilise. Given the value of the role to progressing a number of other economic development team initiatives, both those listed above and other pipeline schemes, this post has been given approval to become permanent. It is anticipated that from January 2023, recruitment will be completed and the vacant post within another RDC team will be filled. It will be from this time that there will be additional staffing costs of Ryedale District Council grade service role, circa £31,000 per annum plus costs.
Thank you, Councillor Gill. Part D of my question. Now that stage 1 of the application process has closed, can you please inform councillors how many applications have been received?
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. A bit of a shorter one on this occasion, with this question before. The closing date for applications was yesterday at 9 AM. At that stage, we had received 20 applications. This has increased today with prior knowledge. Yeah, we're expecting that this one was going to be it, so we now have 21 applications for the
One organisation not to comply with that.
I wasn't sure you were meant to have supplementary question, you only chose to actually be addressed to the council on the most anyways. You can explain that in the other part of the application came from organisation where the person submitting the application was actually been on the web. So we gave them some really questions.
Just responding to that point. It states to the demographic services team that I didn't anticipate asking supplementary questions to each part, only asking one supplementary question. That wasn't the basis of all the questions being asked satisfactorily, being answered satisfactorily. I don't feel that that's the case, given that one key question has not been answered.
So Duncan, it's not down to interpretation. I think you just stick to what we're doing, please. You are thinking a lot of leeway. Thinking no, in terms of interpreting how you feel it's being answered. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just I asked for something I forgot it. That's all. Party, can you please confirm the names of the organisations who have applied, a brief summary of the project and the amount of self-funding that has been requested? I'm happy to take the 20 projects that are listed here if they can be submitted as part of the minutes of the meeting with the 21st project added. But I would just like to ask if this does not include the amounts that have been requested. So I'd like to ask Councillor Keane if that could be possible to be provided.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Yes, the 21st application was for the Milton Rooms, which is the further refurbishment works of the Milton Rooms. The reason that the figures aren't included is because in your email on the 24th, you did say you wanted just a brief summary. You have the brief summary of what they're asking for. If those figures are required, then they can be.
Yes, I did ask for, as the question says, a brief summary of the project and the amount of self-funding that's been requested. I would just like to circle back on the mechanics, Mr. Chairman, the request for legal advice was for the benefit of all councillors, so that we could be assured that the track we have embarked upon, the decision which we took at the last meetings was the right one. I'm disappointed that hasn't been provided. There seems to be a suggestion of mistrust that somehow that information will be publicised or shared with third parties. I was simply asking for that legal advice provided to councillors. Councillor Keele made contact with me recently to ask for my help and support with Section 24 sign-off of another related project. I was happy to provide my help and support, and I'll be still happy to do that, but that is on the basis of being treated with proper respect as democratic councillors should be treated. And the request for that legal advice is a valid one. It's essential to our role. We should receive that advice to enable us to ensure that we have taken the right decision. I will take this up with the acting head of paid service if someone can inform me who the acting head of paid service is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I have responded to your question and explained the reasons why we are not sharing that information at the moment. And the head of paid service at the moment is for this one.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Councillor Duncan. And we're going to move on now. Any further questions? Thank you.
I have a question. Sorry, did we declare an interest as councillors here on this debate? Because I'm feeling deeply uncomfortable. Yeah, hang on, I am feeling deeply uncomfortable here with these questions. Councillor Duncan has already said he wants the money back up to go up to North Yorkshire in the previous meeting, supporting a letter, and now he's basically accusing it. To me, legal advice of one party and another party should stay with the party that's defending themselves. And I'm getting deeply uncomfortable with this a little bit here with what you're saying. Well, you're not though, because you're accusing Di of holding back to council, but actually she's protecting the money for Ryedale here, and you have represented the executive already trying to get the seal money. That's what worries me here, and there's a big conflict of interest that I'm deeply uncomfortable in.
Mr. Chairman, we mentioned conflict of interest there. I just want to clarify that there is not a district council public interest or a county council public interest. There is one public interest. All councils, whichever authority they are part of, is there to serve the public interest. Councillor Keel is not Ryedale District Council. We are Ryedale District Council, all 25 of us. If Councillor Keel has seen a piece of information, we should all be able to see that information. If it's excluded from one, it should be excluded from all, or we should all see that info. And I think as councillors, we need to look really seriously at the situation. And I resent completely Councillor Mason's suggestion of conflict of interest. I'm here to serve my role as Ryedale District Councillor, and I'd like to see the information that Ryedale District Council has been given.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I take your point.
Is this enough?
No, it's not. And I let Councillor Mason just have that, just to clarify something. I think he's spoken on behalf of the county, and I appreciate what he's saying in response. But I'll let Councillor Duncan have his say. I appreciate what you've said, and that's it. And it's a question that's been answered from Councillor Duncan. It's not an open forum, I'm afraid. Thank you.
No, Chairman, I was just going to say,
Sorry.
it became an open forum, which is out of
No, well, I'm stopping the forum now, then I do apologise. So we're going to move on. Thank you. Apologies. So moving on to agenda item 9, please. So it's the amendment in terms of reference of the working party, and I'd like to introduce Elizabeth first, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, members. I would just like to present the draft revised terms of reference, which are attached at Appendix 1 to your report. As you are aware, the terms of reference have to be determined and approved by council, and the grants working party is going to be the vehicle upon which we give consideration to those expressions of interest and subsequently any applications that come through with their business case to the awarding of SIL monies. So I would like to recommend to full council that the draft terms of reference be agreed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Elizabeth, please? Councillor Paul Andrews.
Yeah, yes, Chair. I appreciate that the delegation has and the terms of reference have to be for the committee. But what really worries me is the last sentence, which says all matters referred to above are delegated to the officers as specified. That suggests to me that the officers, these are all officer decisions. And if that's the case, I'm very unhappy about it, because I always thought that it was the grants working party's decisions and not the officers. And I can't see therefore why we have a delegation to officers at the bottom of the page. Can you explain this?
Sorry. Yes, of course, Councillor Andrews. The recommendations that the grants working party will make will then be delegated to the officers to put into practice with their recommendations. So this is not a circumstance when officers will just be making the decisions. It will be the grants working party who will consider all of the applications and the business cases, and they will be the ones that will make the recommendations as to whether the application goes forward or not. Obviously, mindful of the fact that this is still monies, and there are very, very strict criteria which the council has to abide by in terms of the spending of those monies. And you know, under no circumstances will the council act in any way that is ultra vires, which is beyond their powers in terms of this. So this is not a situation where this would be delegated to officers. So I can confirm that.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question really relates to a point of procedure. I'd like to point to councillors to page 97 of the Constitution, which states that every standing committee may appoint working parties for purposes to be specified by the committee. Obviously, this report has not been via policy resources. This is not a meeting of policy resources. This is a meeting of full council. Can the monitoring officer therefore please explain to me why policy resources is not appointing this working party and specifying its terms of reference, and why it is come to full council, which seems to be in direct contradiction of the requirements of the Constitution for a standing committee to appoint a working party, not full council.
This was debated at P&R, and it was decided to send it to the next available full council meeting in order that we could expedite the approval for the terms of reference, in order that the Grants Working Party can take forward the applications for the possible awarding of SIL monies. The next P&R meeting is not until next February, and so therefore there was such a considerable delay that in order to move the matter forward and, you know, determine whether local organisations etc. Are going to be entitled to have an award of this money, it was felt that this was the most appropriate vehicle to do so. You know, to wait to the next P&R is middle of February, you know, 6 weeks before Ryedale ceases to exist. So that was not an appropriate method in which to move forward in this regard.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that question, within the agenda you can see there are a number of recommendations for Policy and Resources Committee. They're detailed in item 12 onwards. This is not a recommendation for Policy and Resources Committee. There was not, to my recollection, any recommendation made by the Policy and Resources to this council to appoint this working party or to decide its terms of reference. It has come here to full council. There has not been a decision of P&R to do that. Can you just clarify, please, Monitoring Officer?
Yes, I can. Yes, Councillor Duncan, I can clarify that. No, it wasn't a decision. It was just raised of the fact that we were going to have to amend. And in fact, indeed, it was you that reminded the committee that, in fact, we did need to have this approved, which is why it has come to full council now. Because to delay until, you know, mid-February before we even started considering any allocation of SIL monies to those organisations that have applied would just be too late to do anything. And so therefore, in order to expedite matters and to deal with this matter in the way that it should be dealt with, and to give the working party the opportunity to review applications and the relevant business cases associated with them to determine whether these organisations within the district qualify and satisfy the criteria, this was the most sensible vehicle in which to undertake that. You know, we are all very mindful that we have got very little time left, and so therefore we didn't have the luxury of waiting until a February P&R meeting in order to amend the terms of reference. So, you know, at times like this and under local government reorganisation, I think this council has to make a decision to take a pragmatic approach in order to complete the business that it possibly can before the 31st of March, when it will no longer exist. And so that is the reason why it is here this evening.
Councillor Joe Andrews.
Thank you. Just could I ask, I'm not sure who to ask, has this document and the draft terms of reference been looked at by the legal advice, or is it something that's been done internally?
No, it's been done internally.
Thank you. Councillor Burr.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've previously been talking about all councillors getting involved. And I think that the perfect place to involve all councillors is here at full council. I wasn't at P&R, but I would have been more than happy for this to come to full council. I think that we all want our money spent in Ryedale for local people, local projects. And this is what we are trying to do before vesting day. So my question is, we need to be pragmatic, Elizabeth. This isn't against the law. We are perfectly able to do this. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keel.
Yeah, sorry, it isn't really a question. I was just going to agree with the point that Elizabeth has raised, that this was discussed informally at Policy Resources. It wasn't a reported item, but it was discussed informally, and this was the decision that it should come to full council because it has to be approved.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, could I just ask, will the Grants Working Party be given access to the legal advice that obviously the rest would not have to see, because it would seem prudent that the people who are going to be dishing out the money actually get to see the legal advice?
At the moment, no, because it's legally privileged. Because once we release that legal privilege, we then, it's then open. What the legal advice related specifically to was to whether we were entitled as a sovereign council to undertake the action that we're taking in terms of the determination as to applications of SIL monies. So we are, and that's why we are moving forward. Once we release that information, and I do take Councillor Duncan's point, and I will come back to a point that he's made. It no longer is legal privilege, and because we still have a disagreement between ourselves and North Yorkshire County Council as to our ability to utilise these SIL monies, and of course they do have their backstop of a Section 24 consent if the value of an award reaches the quantum that a Section 24 consent is required for, then they can stop. They can stop the award. So no, it's not the intention, and it's not the advice of the legal advisors to release this generally. However, I can confirm that legal advice has been obtained that we are not acting ultra vires, we are not acting illegally, and we are entitled to move forward with this. In terms of Councillor Duncan's point, yes, I take the point that you are a district councillor, Councillor Duncan, but actually you do have a conflict of interest because you also sit on the executive of the North Yorkshire County Council, and there is a conflict between your position there and their position with regard to our use of SIL money and what the councillors here at Ryedale wish to do with SIL money. So a conflict does arise, but I think what councillors can be assured of is that we are not undertaking anything that is illegal, and we are not moving forward breaching any SIL criteria. And this is going to be very stringently monitored. Councillors are going to have the opportunity to review these applications and their business cases, and ultimately North Yorkshire County Council have their Section 24 consent oversight on this.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Councillor Paul Andrews.
Yes, Chair. I'm getting a bit bored with these issues of procedure. I mean, we really know what we're all about. We don't need to be bothered with them. But Elizabeth, if we really are acting against the Constitution, could you advise whether it would be appropriate to simply move a motion to waive standing orders so that this matter can be discussed, and then we can get on with it without dealing with any more points of order, and we can get down to business instead of arguing about it. Thank you.
Absolutely, Councillor Andrews, I would completely agree with you. It wasn't anticipated that there would be any opposition to this because it had, as Councillor Keel has said, was informally discussed at PNR. However, if this is an issue for councillors, then the correct course of action, which you have just described, would be for a motion to suspend the standing order so that we can go ahead and make the decision to accept the amendments to the draft terms of reference, so that we may continue and make the decision as to whether this is going to be approved or not this evening. So yes.
In that case, Chair, I move the suspension of standing orders.
I've just got a couple of questions I want to have first, Councillor Ryedale.
Thank you, Chair. This is a roundabout way of thinking. It is a question of confidence really, but as a district councillor, I attended the town council at Kevin Mosack last Monday, and my successor on the town council quite clearly told the town council that the district councillor and this district council were misleading people that were applying for these grants, skills grants. It was illegal, and we were really naughty for misleading them to think there was a chance of them getting them. I took the opportunity to correct that statement to the town council. As far as I was concerned, we were fighting very hard to get this money to be passed. And I was somewhat surprised that he wanted to tarnish my and these officers, these people in office here today, for misleading the public or the electorate. So yeah, there is a vested interest, I think, and it's becoming clear tonight in the conversation and exchanges. I really am disappointed about that.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm amazed. I am utterly amazed by what is going on in this chamber this evening. So, if it was of such importance, why wasn't an extra meeting of P&R called to sort this out properly? When did we decide to chuck the Constitution into the dustbin and jump all over it? We are elected members working to a Constitution. We should have all the information. Now, our council monitoring officer says, because I'm a North Yorkshire councillor, I might be conflicted. If I believe there's a conflict of interest, I'll leave the room. But right now, I can't vote for this. I can't support this because I don't have all the right information, and I'm not going to do it tonight.
Councillor Mason.
Yes, so just a simple question. You talked about your meeting. I didn't catch it, but I didn't work today. Well, it'll be on the minutes, though, won't it? That's the step, really. Who's that?
Councillor Clark. Councillor Andrews, you wanted to move a motion?
I'll move the suspension of standing orders, Chair.
Councillor Duncan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to check,
Chair, it hasn't been seconded.
I know that. I'm just going to give Councillor
I was going to ask, has the recommendation been moved and seconded at this point in time, or are we doing this procedural matter first before that happens? We are seeing the procedural matter. I did want to raise a point of order.
Okay, Elizabeth, can I just ask you what would be the procedure, please?
As Councillor not happy to push this through, yes, we need to do the procedural matter first to suspend the standing order in accordance with what Councillor Andrews has described. So that needs to be done first before we can then go on to consider where the recommendations and then vote on those.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to refer members to page 95 of the Constitution, which states suspension and amendment of council procedure rules. 23.1 suspension. All of these council rules of procedure, except Rule 15.6 and Rule 16.2, may be suspended by motion on notice or without notice if at least one half of the whole number of members of the council are present. Suspension can only be for the duration of the meeting. The reason I raise this point is that it's very clear that only the council rules of procedure can be suspended. And it's important to point out that the rule of procedure relating to working parties is not in the council section of the rules of procedure. It was within the committee section of the rules of procedure, 25C, working parties. Therefore, it is my view that council does not have the ability to suspend a standing order that relates to a committee, given that only a committee can suspend its own standing orders when it is meeting as a committee.
Elizabeth, you want to come back?
Yes, if that is the procedure that Councillor Duncan wants to pursue in terms of the Constitution, and I am, absolutely adamant that we have the Constitution and we should be abiding by it. But as councillors, we can decide to suspend a standing order, and I take the point it's a committee, but the situation is when you look at it, in the broad light of day, we either make a decision here at council to to have a mechanism where we move forward and we make a decision on this, or we suspend it and we wait till the February P&R meeting and we'll put it there, and then we won't have time to deal with any SIL monies, and you know, that will be a matter for members to decide. So this evening we've got to make a decision. Do we just decide that we're not dealing with this matter and we're going to put it to the February P&R meeting, or do we decide that we have a mechanism whereby we have the will of council to determine this evening? That's the choice that you have to make.
Councillor Joy Andrews.
Thank you. Obviously, we've sought legal advice on matters concerning this, and although legally we may not be breaking the law, just breaking the constitution, I'm more than happy if we have an extraordinary P&R meeting as soon as we possibly can, so that this can be done properly to satisfy Councillor Duncan and the constitution. I know it's a lot of more work for officers who are already you know, under a lot of stress and burden, but if that's the way we can move forward to ensure that SIL money is spent in Ryedale, I'm more than happy to turn out on an evening and get that done.
Chair, I'm not sure.
Excuse me, I just want to hear some councillors first. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Mason.
Just a point of order, Chair.
Councillor Mason. That's thank you.
Has the original motion been seconded?
No.
Well, in my opinion, I'm happy to be part of getting here at the moment to council. Just a point of order, it's the executive that are the people that have already approved of the hearing, doing something illegal in different meetings. They're the ones with the vested interest. I would be involved as a right to council. I'm happy to second the motion. Move to vote if we can.
Councillor Paul Andrews.
I wasn't clear, Chair, whether the monitoring officer has said that I am in order to move a motion to suspend standing orders, whether that would be, or whether she agrees with Councillor Duncan to the effect that is not in accordance with the Constitution. Because if it is in order to move suspension of standing orders, then I think it's the first thing that should be done. And I would like it to be seconded without any more discussion, and I would like to go to the vote without any more discussion.
Thank you.
Councillor Burr. Sorry, Elizabeth.
Sorry. No, go to Councillor Burr first.
Councillor Burr.
No.
We seem to be arguing tonight whether we're going to spend Ryedale taxpayers' money in Ryedale. So we're arguing whether we be pragmatic and make things happen, or we go backwards and backwards and waste time so that possibly things might not happen. I am here today as a Ryedale District Councillor who wants Ryedale's money spent in Ryedale. We have been told, whether you believe it or not, that nothing is illegal, so we can get on with it. We have some councillors that are worried about that. So proposals have been made to try and do something pragmatic tonight to make it happen. We're arguing and arguing about taxpayers' money. All they want is it spent in Ryedale. So we can't agree on one and we can't agree on the other. Our monitoring officer has said we are not doing anything illegal. So let's just go with the first option and let's go for it and let everybody in Ryedale get what they want and the money be spent in Ryedale and it benefits the whole of Ryedale. I am not here to promote North York County Council to keep North York County's coffers full. I'm just here as a Ryedale District Council, as I'm sure all the other county councillors are. Let's do our best for Ryedale. My opinion, Chair, to you is just let's go with the first thing because the waters are getting very, very muddy. And I respect what Councillor Joy Andrews says about let's have another meeting. I totally respect that. We ain't got time for all this. We really have not got time. We are going finished, finito, that's it. Take your opportunity now, get this money spent, or let's argue until vesting day and we'll have nothing, and then maybe everyone will be satisfied.
Yeah, Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's absolutely nonsense, this.
Yeah.
Absolutely and utterly nonsense. We've heard what the monetary officer says. She said it's okay, it's not illegal. So why, Councillor Burr said, let's get the money spent in Ryedale. We can't wait till February. We need to do it now. So let's go for a vote and let's agree it.
Yeah, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you. I just want to be very clear. I'm not debating the merits of SIL. I've got a view on SIL myself. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the money, and I'm not questioning the advice that Elizabeth has seen and Councillor Keane has seen, which says everything is legal. Obviously, advice we're not allowed to see. What I'm questioning is whether the council has the power to do what Councillor Andrews is requesting, which is to suspend a committee procedure. Councillor Andrews would like, has moved in motion to suspend a committee procedure. We are council, and the Constitution makes clear that only a committee can suspend a committee procedure rule. What I'm trying to say, and we haven't heard from Elizabeth whether she believes, under her assessment, that council has the power to suspend the committee procedure rule. And if I was trying to promote the interests of any other party other than the taxpayers of Ryedale, or trying to serve a particular agenda, perhaps I would just sit here quietly while a procedural error takes place in this decision-making process, which would then give anyone who opposes this the opportunity to challenge it. I'm not doing that. I'm raising what is a constitutional issue, which is a contravention of Ryedale's own procedures, so that we can get this right. So that if we are able to spend this money, and that's a democratic rule of this council, that's not challenged at a later stage and cause it's further delayed. So I would just like to make that point. This is about Councillor Andrews' proposal on a motion to suspend the committee procedure.
Chair, I understand that we can proceed without suspending standing orders. In those circumstances, I would draw the motion to suspend standing orders.
I think really, I appreciate Elizabeth's input on this and what she said. But I'm a firm believer, I know Councillor Duncan is, and I know Councillor John Clark was, we have a constitution for a reason. And why write it otherwise? So if we're happy to move on with that, I think it's going to save a lot of time. So we'll put that to one side and we'll have the recommendation moved. Elizabeth,
can I just make a point, Chair? Thank you. Going back to Councillor Duncan's point, yes, he technically, if we were reading the Constitution by the letter, what we should do is that we should call for an EGM and not suspend, but we are having a pragmatic approach. I'm not quite sure when we could have an EGM. I'm not sure that we could fit it in before Christmas for a P&R. Technically, I don't believe we're doing anything illegal. I think council has to take a view, but if you were looking legally at every word of the Constitution, then Councillor Duncan is quite correct. So council has to make a decision this evening. Are you going to take a pragmatic view and suspend the order or not?
I think the feeling is not that, Elizabeth. I appreciate your input, and I think we need to move on. So what I'm proposing is that we move this forward. If somebody would like to propose this, please, to amend the terms of reference for a grants working party. That's it. I seconded it. Beg your pardon. Who proposed it? I beg your pardon, right, just to clarify that. So we've had questions. We've had debate. Everything. So we'll just go to have debate. Go on then. Councillor Lincoln, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's interesting that now, as a matter of public record, the monitoring officer has stated that taking the Constitution by the letter, we are not following the Constitution. That's not necessarily legal, but it's unconstitutional. And I think would leave us open to challenge at a later stage by North Yorkshire County Council or by any other individual who may wish to challenge this process. I want to put on record my objection to proceeding but the course of action that you have confirmed as monitoring officer is not constitutional. We may well like to be pragmatic, we may well like to take things forward, but we should not be taking decisions which are unconstitutional, and councils will be doing that in full knowledge of the legal advice that you have given. I want to raise a second point, which is we are delegating all of these SIL grants the SIL applications to a working party to make recommendations to officers in consultation with one councillor, Councillor Keel. They will make all of the decisions about allocations of this funding. They will not be involved from any other councillor sat around the table today in terms of the formal decision making. Councillor Burr has made a point that I wholly agree with, which is she wanted to involve all councillors in this process. Therefore, I would like to move an amendment to the proposal that's been put forward. And the amendment will be to delete the recommendation and to propose that full council has the final say on all SIL applications.
Sorry, Councillor Duncan, can you just repeat that?
That full council has the final say on all SIL applications.
Can I just say, Chair, that to proceed and to suspend the part of the Constitution does open us to risks if someone was to challenge. Councillor Duncan is quite right, but it's how we deal with this. If we had plenty of time, I would suggest that we call an EGM of P&R and that we deal with this in that way. And I think in terms of the opposition and some of the comments that councillors have made this evening on this, I think probably that would be the best thing to do. And I would have to work with officers to determine how quickly we could have an EGM, P&R. I think there's not agreement amongst councillors in order for us to go ahead, and we are at some risk.
Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Chair, I really am getting bored with all this. I mean, we used to have Councillor Clark making this sort of points, and it came up that they went on and on and on, and we all supported him because we were on his side of the table. But I really think it's I really think now Councillor Duncan has sort of taken over Councillor Clark's point. But the point that I would make is there is such a thing, a concept in law called de minimis. De minimis non curat lex. The law does not bother about little details. And at the moment, I cannot see how the public can be at any way disadvantaged when the whole council isn't present at this meeting, where it's on the agenda. It's been on the agenda. The agenda papers were sent out. In my view, if this ever came before the court on this basis, and the judge was to look at it, he'd say, "What the hell are you talking about? What are you doing? Trying to make a mockery of the law?" Because that's what this is. Yes.
Chair, could I interject, please? If council are so minded, and in order to move this forward, we have the EGM next Thursday on the sale of the Wentworth Street car park. May I suggest that it might be prudent in the circumstances that we call an EGM? I think we should have time to do that.
With all due respect, Elizabeth, I think the feeling I'm getting is that I'm going to go through the amendment procedure.
Okay. Okay.
And if that goes that way, we'll discuss something else. If it doesn't, we'll go to the recommendation. Councillor Thackeray.
I would like to put on record that I find it incredible and disappointing that our monitoring officer gives one piece of advice at the beginning of her speech about the legality of this process that we're suggesting. And after Councillor Duncan has invoked fear and threat of legal action, our monitoring officer capitulates and says, "Oh, maybe not then."
No, I was trying to have
but that's how it comes across to me.
I'm sorry if it does, Councillor Thackeray. I was trying to have a pragmatic approach based on what was discussed at P&R, and that it was the will of P&R that it would be dealt with today. I'm not frightened of Councillor Duncan's approach, but I mean, he is correct in some of the things that he says, but I was trying to get this through in order that we could deal with this matter before it ceases. So I'm sorry if you feel that way.
Thank you. Councillor Joy Andrews.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that we had a meeting coming up shortly, but I didn't know whether 7 days was long enough to actually get an agenda out. No?
We're pushing it. We're pushing it because it, you know, we're 5 days. I don't know. We'd have to look at dates if that's.
Well, we could maybe be pragmatic. I mean, I don't know what the Constitution says, how long it is on that, but we could maybe be pragmatic in calling it a meeting on P&R. But I mean, and I know it is. Well, it isn't wasting time. I want things done properly. I mean, Councillor Goodrich has made the point. I mean, I want this money spent in Ryedale, but I don't want Councillor Duncan coming up at a meeting further on when we've allocated money and say we constitutionally didn't do that right, and therefore there's a legal reason why it can't be given to whoever's we're allocating it to. And so I would like to move that we don't discuss this evening, but I don't know how that works with the chairman, because I know Councillor Duncan's put an amendment in, which I would like to speak on if we do discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mason.
I'm kind of in agreement with Joy now on this, because following the advice from the officer has changed completely since I seconded it. I don't feel like I'm seconded it now. And I think an immediate emergency meeting of P&R as soon as possible for next week is the only way forward. And unfortunately, you know, I get advice on one hand and it's changed.
Councillor Thacker. Yeah, for the second time in the last 2 weeks, I'm going to say the same thing again. Missiles are raining down on the people of Ukraine, and this council is a farce. It's a comedy show. Thank you. Right, the way forward then. It's looking interesting. I think we'll go with Councillor Duncan's amendment first of all, and then we'll clarify and vote on that, and then we'll try and move the way forward. I'm just conscious of doing things right, and I'm conscious of the time factor as well. Councillor Burr, I will let you have one final comment, please.
Been read out.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, the slip that Councillor Duncan
Yeah.
has given you, because we're following procedure. Councillor Oxley wants procedure. We only want procedure tonight. Okay, right, let's do it right then. So that's what we do.
I think if Councillor Duncan reads out his amendment, please.
Yes, sorry, I'm not presenting the constitution to that pricing. I'm actually worried about that. I don't know if an officer has written down my amendment. Yeah, sorry, Nicky. What's the bit?
So deleting the original.
The amendment was to delete the recommendations and propose that full council has the final say on all cert applications.
Recommendations, or applications.
So I'm happy to include that. That makes more sense, Joe.
So would you like to move that?
That's quite important.
Yes, I'd like to move. I'd like to go to recommendations, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move. I'd just like to say that we are talking here about potentially £3 million of funding to allocate to Ryedale's communities.
Right.
The grants procedure which we use for the community grants of £50,000 a year is the grants working party meet makes recommendations to policy and resources. They're usually relatively small amounts of money that can make a very critical difference. But we have that feed into a formal committee structure where council with all different political parties can debate those, ask questions if needed, as happened in the past, and then make final decisions. When we're talking about not £50,000, but £3 million taxpayer money, it would seem very wise and sensible and logical that all councillors will be involved in making the final decisions on what could be potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds per application. Therefore, I think that would give reassurance and a democratic check and balance to these decisions, so that if P&R wants a working party to meet, that's its prerogative, in my view, to discuss the applications, they can then make recommendations to us as full council. I think that would be appropriate and would be in line with the timeline that's been laid out by the officers. They're wanting, I believe, to make decisions by March the 30th. Obviously, abolition days the 31st of March. We do have, I believe, 2 full councils before that date, so there will be 2 opportunities where these applications could be debated democratically by councillors rather than bypassing the democratic process. I think given the queries that have been raised, first of all, that everything we're doing is legal, then we're referring to advice that we can't see, and then actually there might be some issues that might not be fully compliant, might not be fully constitutional. The best thing to do in all circumstances, I believe, it would avoid having a meeting, an extraordinary meeting here now as well, is that we decide as full councillors in power that we want to determine these applications democratically with all councillors being involved. I think that would actually then ensure that we're leaving the very best legacy that we can for the rest of the Ryedale, as is the wish, I think, of all members of the council.
Thank you, Councillor. You're proposing that? Second. Councillor Docker, thank you. Councillor John Andrews.
Yes, I was just when Kimberly first proposed this, I was a bit reluctant because both council and committees have to go through due process and get agendas out, etc. Whereas a working party can be called at last minute and we can go in and we can discuss things. And I don't think there's any criteria that says that anybody on the council can't. So we could have it that the working party is the full council if they wanted to come. So it can be discussed last minute or certain applications we may not, rather than, I think this is going to stall things, if anything, coming back to full council or bits of information out. We see how it's been for the last few years. So I think if anything, we should be changing it. The size and makeup of the Civil Grants Working Party will remain the same. I think we should change that to say include anybody on the council that wishes to come to the meetings. Therefore, we can thrash it out all night if that's what it takes. But everybody has a right then to attend the meetings, to have their say. It is a recommendation. We don't, and then it goes through the rest of the procedure on here rather than bringing it back to the full council, where it could be, one contentious thing on the allocation of this funding could mean the difference between getting all the rest of council business done or not.
Yes, Duncan, will you be happy to amend your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the key difference between what I'm suggesting and what Councillor Andrews is suggesting is that under the current proposal, the working party will be consulted, will make recommendations to what is referred to here as the Director of Place and Resources in consultation with the Section 151 officer and the Chair of Policy Resources. So the decision will be taken solely and wholly by the Director of Place and Resources. If we had a working party, if all members were able to attend that and invited to do so, they will not be making the decisions. So anything that they say do in that forum would not be governed by the normal rules of procedure. It would not be a formal decision. It would be taken by an officer and an officer alone, in consultation with another officer of the Chair of DNR. What I'm saying is that it's a check and balance. We're talking about 100, 200, 500,000 pounds. Those types of amounts of money in all circumstances usually come, as has happened tonight in the St. Leonard's War. £173,000 came here. The renovation of the wall came here. These big projects, I think, should also come here. So I'm not happy to accept Councillor Andrews has said.
Thank you. Just before I go to members again, John would like to just
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just very, very briefly for the members' information. I hope this is helpful. As Elizabeth mentioned, we're working on some incredibly tight timelines here. The current proposal is that we have effectively a 2-stage process. So the first stage is an expression of interest process. That expression of interest process is now closed. The original concept is that those expressions of interest, EOIs, will be determined within the course of the next 2.5 weeks. 4 applications will then be invited for those applications to come back sometime towards the end of January. So if we are seeking member approval of each stage in the process around the EOIs, and of course that's your decision to make, then there will be a need to get that member involvement really within the next 2.5 weeks. So we'll keep the process on track and make sure we can make some decisions prior to investing this. It's just important that we make that point.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. Going on what's happened in the grant working party before, last meeting we gave away £300,000. If you bring £3 point whatever it is million, everybody to discuss, we'd be there for a fortnight. Because it would, you'd never get, going on the meeting tonight, you'd never make a decision.
Councillor Andrews.
It's just a question to Councillor Duncan, Chair. Does his amendment suggest that the working party goes through the process that we discussed, and that when the working party has decided on its final recommendations, that then instead of those final recommendations being referred to officers plus the chair of the P&R, those final recommendations be referred to a meeting of full council at the very end of the process. And I'm taking Philip's point that we don't want to have that. We don't want members involved at every step. But are you, Councillor Duncan, simply saying just at the very end of the process, instead of working party going back to officers and the chair of P&R, they simply come back to a meeting of this full council? Is that all you're asking for?
Yeah, so it would be the final decision, the final stage. Any recommendations from the working party of P&R might wish to set up, this full council would have the final say on the applications, cumulatively and collectively. Is that?
Thank you, Councillor Oxley.
Yeah, just if I may just follow up on that, so I'm absolutely clear. That presumably means that what we have in front of us now is recommendation from staff, as long as there's a final sentence at the end, said those decisions have to come to full council to be ratified. Given what you've just said,
What I was thinking might happen is that P&R might wish to set up this working party if it so wishes. As if it's right, we can't tell them what to do as 10 members of that committee. What I'm saying is the final decision, the final safeguard in all of this process is at the very last stage, any recommendations come here to full council.
Councillor Oxley.
yeah. Councillor Duncan, we're trying to balance this out, and I've made my own point about procedures tonight in the Constitution, so I completely agree about it, not good deviating. I actually think that question, the first answer, my question, and a different answer, we have actually unhooked this completely. And that all we have to do, being sensible, pragmatic people who want to spend money in Ryedale, is to say we go with this, but then whatever is decided is then has to come to a meeting of full council to be. If that's the case, can we not, Philip, Elizabeth, Chair, fix a date for an extraordinary meeting of council now that will fit that time scale so we can get it done well before vesting day?
Councillor, I'm not sure we can actually fix a date tonight, but I'm sure we can fix a date outside this forum and make that happen.
So in principle, the answer is yes.
Yes.
So well before Christmas, we could know when that meeting was taking place. We could all put it in our diaries, and we would know that we were coming to make decisions on the recommendations made by this working party.
It will need to be an additional council meeting. Yeah, we can facilitate that.
Yes, that works for me. I hope it works for everyone.
Yeah, that's Councillor Burrow,
Speechless, Chair, about how we are actually conducting our business today. We are talking about £3 million of Ryedale taxpayers' money to be spent in Ryedale, and we are worrying about this dot there, that comma there. Can we agree? Shall we have an amendment? Well, yeah, we've got an amendment, but let's then change the amendment while we're all debating the first part of the amendment or the second part of the amendment. It's quite farcical how we're going round and round in circles. I personally feel that this amendment will slow everything up. I am absolutely conscious that we have got until the 31st of March to organise, to work with all these people who have, in good faith, put in applications and are hoping that we give them. But oh no, good old Ryedale, we can't agree. We can't agree to spend 30 million of Ryedale's money. We, elected members, we can't, yeah, 3 million, we can't agree. No wonder I'm getting confused. It's so confusing. It's ridiculous, Chairman. We just need to make a decision. The decision that we started talking about, I think it's now 40 minutes ago, would have been the easiest solution. Be pragmatic. Spend this money. Don't let it go up to North York County Council because it's not guaranteed that we're going to get it. Don't drag it out. Don't make officers have to come to more meetings, etc. We've got a plan. We've got a plan on the table. As someone once said, who is no longer, it's oven ready. Shall we use that analogy tonight? I beg you not to support this. Go back to the first thing that we were deciding. Agree. I have been to many, many working parties, and I have never, ever not heard the chairman say, would you like to speak? Would you like to talk? I'd like to listen to you. Yes, let's have your opinion, etc., 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 etc. We're worried that people can't have their say. You can all pile into that working party and say what you want. You turn up and you say what you want. Tonight, there's a full council. For goodness sake, please can't we just make a decision and tell those people who have, with good faith, put their applications in? Why can't we just do it? But oh no, good old Ryedale, you know, there's some stalling tactics, or well, you know, it might be political, it might be not political. Let's just get on with it.
Councillor Goodrow.
Chairman. I'd love to get on with it. But if we don't do this properly, there is an outside chance when those people are awarded those monies, they actually won't get them. And then what do we do? You know, at the end of the day, we either do this properly with the Constitution and we make sure we do this right, or there is a chance the very people we want to give the money to won't get it. So let's do this properly. Let's stop debating round and round the houses and just do it properly.
I'd just like to second what Councillor Goodrick's just said. I think we need to do this properly.
Councillor Keele.
Thank you. Yeah, I have to say, I agree with most of what Councillor Brown has said. I talk to my small group, but I talk to them. I ask their opinion, and if I go to a committee meeting, I ask their opinion, and I will feed that into the debate. Everybody goes to the working party, and it is cross-party, has that option to actually talk to all the members of their groups and get their opinions before they go to the working party. It's worked very well, and yes, I appreciate we're talking about an awful lot more money at this time, but it has worked, and I'm sure the chair of the working party will agree. It has worked. Yeah. Everybody gets a fair time to give their opinion and give their opinion, the opinion of members of their group, so we're not in that working party. This is another delaying tactic, and you know, if you cannot trust your colleagues who have been working very hard on this, not to mention the officers who have put hours and hours and hours into this project to make sure it works, to make sure the criteria are really firm, and that we are not going to be spending money that we shouldn't be spending on things. Everything is laid out. We have a timeline. Why do we now, at this last minute, want to change it? I think it's fairly obvious why we want to change it, because it's a delaying tactic yet again. But please, can we carry on with the recommendation we've got on this the process of consensus preference? Thank you.
Councillor Mason.
Yeah, thank you. Just to qualify, so I brought my support of the original I seconded the original recommendation, basically because of the advice I was getting on the constitutional advice, because it was contradicting in my head. I'm happy that the legal advice is sound. I'm happy that that advice that we receive allows us to proceed. I really do feel that this feels like a setup. This really does feel like a setup. We're being set up here. If we don't follow procedure properly now, then something's going to come down the line. I think, Caroline, you're right. I don't think the money will ever come to see the light of day.
be sucked up by North Yorkshire. And I do think this setup is being led by council members. And I just feel it's such a shame for Ryedale. We're trying to spend money Ryedale for our residents, and we're just being stalled by procedure and procedure, and it happens time and time again, and I just think it's out of order. But I think we've been set up, so I think we need to do it right, get a meeting, as Will suggests, get the process in place as soon as possible. And it's our substitute, we can't have to.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
I will substitute the second. Councillor Mason second. I will be the
Thank
second.
you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Clark.
Just to say a couple of things, I mean, I would be available any night next week if anybody needs to set up a urgent P&R meeting. I'm more happy to make myself available for that if it's what we need to do. From a procedural point of view, are we able to change this item to either an urgent motion to be discussed tonight and therefore it be get rid of all the sort of legal issues with that, or an item of urgent business? Because it's, you know, are we able to sort of move it sideways and therefore get rid of all of the sort of any question about that, and therefore guarantee that it is, you know, a watertight legal way of doing it?
Elizabeth, would you like to comment on that?
The situation is it's the difference between a working party and a committee and suspending the standing orders. Obviously, myself and officers were looking at this with a pragmatic approach, and we believe because this had been debated at P&R that we had the will of members to move forward in this regard. I think in the circumstances and the concern that members have raised on this, and you know, Councillor Duncan has raised some legitimate points, that it would be unfortunate if we took a pragmatic approach and then this was challenged. We weren't expecting this to be challenged, and we weren't expecting councillors following this at P&R to take this approach. I think what we should do is that we should have an urgent P&R EGM where we comply with the time limit for the issuing of the agenda, change the terms of reference then, and get this done before the next grants working party on the 15th of December. I think that would be the safest way. I think it would satisfy all the concerns of some councillors, and we wouldn't have affected the time limit, because we have the 15th of December listed as the first grants meeting. So I think in the circumstances we ought to do that.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering how far we can kick this can down the road, or more to the point, how far certain members could kick this can down the road, and for what reason? For what reason do they want to not have this money come to Ryedale? Do we trust the Grants Working Party to make a decision?
Yes.
I do. But unfortunately, it does seem that certain people have managed to use the Constitution to their own ends for exactly what they want to do. Now, unfortunately, it does appear that we've ended up in a position through the clever manipulation of the Constitution that we have little choice but to go down that route. Can we go down it as quickly as possible, and then can we possibly let the Grants Working Party do the job that they've been doing for years, very successful? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ryedale.
Thank you, Chair. It's becoming more and more evident to me that, and it has been a period of time of being a district councillor, that politics have more control of what we do here than representing the people that elected us here to make decisions. And we get this political backbiting going on and on and on. And what I said before, and I maybe ramble around a bit, but yeah, there's obviously a plan by a section of one political party to block what we've been trying to do today. Yeah, I did hear quite clearly last Monday what the man said, and it's Councillor Greg White. And yeah, it's come to fruition. What he predicted, it would be illegal. And I just plead with you. I just plead with you to to do what most people want us to do. We all say we want it. There's sales money there. It should be distributed into the district rather than filtered across further afield and spread over a bigger area. Please, don't let's nitpick about this, that, and the other. We are kind of right to do what we're doing and what we want to do.
I just like to bring it up, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very briefly, Chair. Just in Ross active bit of paid service, it's important that I reiterate what I believe the advice that was given is the correct advice. That we should call an extraordinary meeting at P&R as soon as we possibly can. I am just fearful that if we don't do that and don't follow the Constitution, then we may be facing problems further down the road. We need to look at the dates for that as quickly as we possibly could, and we will do that and facilitate that. But as I say, I would want to reiterate in the strongest possible terms my belief that we need to follow Elizabeth's advice on this and call extraordinary meeting as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you. I think we're all adding to the can being kicked somewhere. I know that, but I think in terms of time, we just going to let a couple more councillors have their say, and then we'll move through to vote. Thank you, John.
Thank you. I know Councillor Duncan's got on the table this amendment, but as we're going to be looking at this at the extraordinary finance, so we're just going to kick that out, move on now.
Yeah, I think you and I will,
Because
I want to go forward. We might want to go against.
Well, no, but we're not discussing any of it this evening because it's not constitutionally right. I think you amend it at the extraordinary P&R.
Yeah, okay, P&R, isn't it?
Yeah.
What I have proposed in my amendment is constitutionally compliant. We are able to decide this evening that final decisions on sale applications are made by full council. We are full council and we can make that decision. There seems to be some confusion by some councillors. I want to point to section 2.5 from numeral 5 of the appendix, which states that making recommendations for decisions and conditions of grant, the final approval by the Director of Place and Resources in consultation with the section 151 officer and chair of Policy Resources. That means that any of these applications will not be discussed by full council or committee at any stage. They will only be discussed by the working party. Recommendations then made to one officer and one officer alone to make that decision. There seems to be some members around the table who believe that full council should have the say. I'm one of those people. I think that's right, a logical thing for us to do, the democratic thing to do as a final legacy by the district council.
Chair,
Thank you.
Chair. What I am hearing from Councillor Duncan is that he's withdrawing his objection to the main motion, provided we pass his amendment. Now, if that is the case, and if that is agreed, we are all the procedural point doesn't matter anymore because we are all in agreement. And the procedural point is this, Chair. The motion has been proposed and seconded. Councillor Duncan has moved an amendment, and that has been seconded. We should only be discussing the amendment at this stage, and we should have a vote on the amendment, and then we have a vote on the main motion, either with the amendment or without it. And can we please move on, please, Chair?
Okay.
Please, can you explain that to me? I don't understand.
Basically, we're going to vote on Councillor Duncan's amendment first of all. That's what we need to do now. No. Yeah, to go to full council.
Check. That means if we got this amendment then we can't vote on the recommendation because of procedural. We shouldn't be voting on this amendment. Because the same line you come in that, please.
Hang on.
Could you just reply to Councillor Mason's? Councillor Mason, would you like to repeat it?
I'm rather confused now because Councillor Duncan has made a procedural point that this council can't consider this matter. This should go to P&R. He wanted an EGM for a P&R. People seem to be coming to that view. Now he doesn't seem to want that. He just wants us to amend so it goes to full council. So I'm a little bit confused as to exactly what it is that he is putting forward.
You can't amend this if you're not voting on it. Doesn't make sense. Sure.
Councillor Duncan.
Sorry, yes, thank you. The point I was making originally is that full council does not have the power to determine something that a committee has the power to do. We also can't tell that committee what to do. That's their prerogative. The point I'm making here is that the only thing we can do this evening is to decide who makes the final decision, because we made that decision originally to delegate it to the officer in consultation with two other individuals. We can make the decision as a final safeguard that any recommendations, any officers or working party are made by full council. That's what I'm recommending that we do. If Policy and Resources wishes to decide it wants to set up a working party, terms of reference to make recommendations, that's their choice. We can't decide that here tonight. What we can decide is that full council makes a decision. And irrespective of the constitutional point that I raised originally, I wanted full council to have the say, given the magnitude of these decisions, given the amount of money that's involved, because these are important decisions for Ryedale's communities. So in effect, now, in terms of reference, the grants working party recommendations are irrelevant, because we can only decide what council has the ability to decide, which is that we want to make those decisions ourselves at the final stage of this process.
Thank you, Councillor Burke.
I'd just like to make the point that this is very, very unusual, this to happen. This council has an amendment put to us. All you are voting on is the amendment, not all the background information that you're now starting to listen to. You're voting on the amendment. If the amendment is lost, then you are voting on substantive motion. Don't get mixed up about what you're voting for, because you might end up, you know the old saying, be careful what you wish for, you'll get it. You'll vote the wrong way. I'm just saying, Chairman, it's never normally happened that you start changing the amendment mid-flow and start discussing, and maybe P&L want this, and maybe we can do that. Chair, if you read out the amendment, that is what we are voting on, and then we are going back to the first one, okay?
Councillor Oxley.
I'm going to say exactly what I said 22 minutes ago, because I think we've come back to the same place. I really am absolutely staggered. We can deal with this tonight very simply. And I agree with Councillor Burke. I've never known a situation where there have been so many cross amendments flowing across the floor and nobody's quite sure what's going on. This can stand as it is, as long as we put at the end of it decisions to be ratified or to be referred to full council for final decision. That goes on to this as the amendment. We can actually get on with it. There's no reason why we can't. Constitutionally, there's no reason why we can't. We had that confirmed by the monitoring officer.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As we are talking about the amendment, Councillor Duncan seems to be very concerned that under 2(b)(5), making recommendations for decisions and conditions of grants for final approval by the Director of Place and Resources in consultation with blah, blah, blah. Now, he says that puts the decision on one person. To my mind, that is saying we don't trust the Director of Place and Resources to take the recommendation of the committee. Now, funnily enough, I trust our officers and I trust our Chair of Policy and Resources, an S151 officer, to take the recommendations of those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to move forward now. I'm sorry. I thought Councillor Oxley, when he spoke, was going to say he was going to go back to his original statement 22 years ago, because it seems that long. We're going to vote on this amendment first. I'll ask Nicky to read it. I'll ask Nicky to read out the amendment of which we're going to vote on, and then we'll move forward with the results from that. So Nicky, if you'd like to reread that out, please.
was to delete the recommendation and propose that full council has the final say. And I think Councillor Duncan may have added any recommendation from the working party. Has the final say on any recommendations from the still working party.
Yes, I think it's there was a discussion of the chair around some of the wording, and I was thinking that the best wording for the amendment is that final decision on civil grant application made by full council. I think that's the logical way of phrasing it.
No, you just changed it. It's recommendations that we had a debate for an hour.
But the recommendations are from working party.
Yeah, so
may or may not be created.
Not all decisions, like you just said.
Final decisions on civil grant application.
Recommendations, not application.
Final decisions
on recommendations, not application.
On grant recommendations, but I don't know if it's going to be recommendations if we don't make a working party.
Mr. Chairman, I particularly not agree with that.
Well, that's why it's recommendation.
Okay, just for clarity, so we know specifically what we're voting on. Nikki, would you like to put that together for us again?
Chair, I think that Councillor Duncan's approval of the final decision on civil grant recommendations come to full council.
Thank you, and that's seconded by Councillor Dockra. Thank you. So if you'd like to vote on that recommendation, please.
I request the recording vote, please.
Thank you.
That is 7 votes for, 6 against, and 6 abstentions.
It's going to an extraordinary meeting.
Motion. 7 for, 6 against.
Yeah. Okay, so my understanding that we vote on the substantial motion to recommend this go forward. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. So now.
No, we need to.
Yeah, so we're moving this forward now to vote on that as a substantive. So just for clarity, the amendment's been carried. So we're moving the proposal forward with the recommendation with that added at the end of it.
The amendment, Mr. Chairman, to delete the legal recommendation to add.
That's
what Nicky said.
No. Chair, this is why we originally had a situation where we had the amendments in writing.
I asked for that.
This is the first.
That's been read out, and that's what we worked on. Have to vote on what we've. The original proposal's been removed, and we've had.
Clarification going against what the legal advice is saying now, we're doing it now.
That's the point. This is the setup.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the setup. We do this, we get legal challenge. Because it's been set up in the chamber. Yes, it has. I've done legal challenges. This is the setup, big stuff. Sorry, but I can't vote on this. This is a setup.
Can I speak that a bit louder so the recording gets it?
Do you want this money to be spent in Ryedale, Councillor Duncan?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good.
Yeah, Chair, I think we've been misled because I distinctly asked Councillor Duncan, was he saying that when the working party made the recommendations, then the decision should be done by his council? he said yes. And so on that basis, he's now, what he's done is he's altered his amendment twice while we've been going through this. And that, to my mind, is totally unacceptable. On that basis, the vote on the amendment must be taken again.
The amendment was read out with clarity, and the additional change was made, and we all listened to it.
Can I ask a question?
Who's going to get the legal challenge? Elizabeth, just legally, can we just clarify what we do here?
Yeah, so Councillor Duncan read out his amendment, which was then voted on. The amendment was carried. And so therefore the amendment as carried now becomes a substantive motion to vote on. Now, as a consequence of the fact that council have now decided to do this, then it does away with the P&R EGM. So we are voting now on the substantive motion as set out by Councillor Duncan.
Okay, and Councillor Arnold?
So, Chair, can we bring another amendment? Bring it that way, it should go.
I'll second that, please.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to clarify your amendment, Councillor Arnold?
I'd like to propose that it goes to an emergency P&R and discussed properly, and we can do the whole lot in 10 minutes if it was done right. As soon as
Okay,
possible.
so that's been seconded by Councillor Mason. Elizabeth, are we okay to do that?
Yes.
Very much. Thank you. Right, for clarity, Nikki, would you like to read out that amendment, please?
Yes, Chair, if Councillor Arnold would confirm, this item goes to P&R, to an emergency P&R as soon as possible.
Councillor Duncan.
If what Councillor Arnold proposes to add that section, which is that this being discussed at an extraordinary meeting at P&R, so that they can, if they want to set up a working party, I'll happily accept that.
Or anything on this.
Well,
Chair, I think the exact word should be that this matter be deferred for a special meeting of policy for an extraordinary meeting of policy and resources to be set up at the first available opportunity.
Chairman, obviously, council has just voted that they want final decision on the silver grant recommendations to be made by full council. So a committee won't be able to then contradict that. That's what's been voted to go in the draft references. That hasn't been voted on. Sorry, that's been included. So the motion that's now on the table is final decisions on silver grant recommendations to be made by full council. So Councillor Arnold now can add, delete, replace, as long as it doesn't contradict what we've already just voted on, which is the.
Can I add something, Chair, please, to this? Yes, I think it would be appropriate with Councillor Arnold's amendment that added to by Councillor Andrews, that this is deferred to the EGM of P&R to be set for first available opportunity, and we could then incorporate what the other substantive motion was that the final decision of the Grants Working Party goes to full council. So we can still do things in the time limit, and therefore we can stop this arguing. We can have the EGM, we can amend the terms of reference appropriately, we can have that the final decision goes to P&R, and we can do all that before the first meeting of the Grants Working Party on the 15th of December. I think that would be the sensible way forward. That would make sure there would be no legal challenges from anyone, applicants, or indeed North Yorkshire County Council. So I think that's what we ought to do.
Councillor Arnold.
Now, please.
Councillor Arnold, would you like to just clarify what we've heard there and put that forward as your amendment?
I agree with what our monitor officer said. That it goes to emergency P&R as soon as we can to discuss the whole thing till we get it dead right, so we can amend the Grants Working Party condition. Is that good enough?
With the final decision to go to full council.
Final decision to full council.
Yes.
Councillor Mason.
Secondary of this, I think this is the best way we can move forward and protect ourselves from basically North Yorkshire trying to take the money away from us.
Councillor Burr.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed about this, but it's probably the best way forward. But if I could just beg your indulgence, please, I could just ask a question. Are you actually saying then, Elizabeth, the 15th of December, that we can come back and we can talk it and we can finish it?
Yes, so if we
I'm okay with that then.
yeah, I was just looking at the diary. If we could have the emergency EGM on Monday the 12th, that would give us time for tomorrow to to issue the agenda for the EGM. We could then have the amendment that the final decision goes to full council. We've then covered every base, and then we have still got the meeting of the first meeting of the Grants Working Party on the 15th of December, so we can conclude the business on the 12th at the EGM of the PNR, amend the terms of reference, have the final say going to full council, because we've got 2 left before we finish as a council, and we can then protect ourselves from any challenge and move forward and make these decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Can I just check that we're able to actually do various things here in concurrency, so we can say to the applicants of this to basically carry on with their applications whilst we're sorting out the whilst we're sorting out the procedural matters, Lindsay?
Yes, yes, we can.
So
yes,
we're not going to actually delay anything.
no,
But we're gonna concentrate on getting our stuff sorted out. And
yes, because at the moment,
do it right, and then the people who are actually applying for the funding can carry on applying for the funding, irrelevant of which model we end up choosing as a council. But we're not actually delaying it.
no, that's quite correct. No, we're not, because at the moment we've got the 21 expressions of interest, which then was going to go to the grants party to look at, and then formal business cases would come in. We've already got the grants party meeting, the first one organised for the 15th of December, so we can get all of our procedural matters done to make sure we're covered so that we won't have any challenge, and then we've satisfied the concerns of some of the members that they've raised here this evening. We can then continue with the meeting on the 15th, and then of course we can get the business cases in, and then they can be dealt with at the next 2 full council meetings. So we're not delaying anybody, we're just dotting the i's and crossing the t's so that we can't be challenged in this regard.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Chairman, please can we go to the vote?
Councillor Duncan first.
As long as I'm understanding things correctly, which is the final decision made by full council, an extraordinary meeting PNR will meet to convene to discuss the working party. The working party will then meet as many times as it needs to then form recommendations to come to council. If that's, we're all on the same page, we're all on the same understanding. I'm happy to support those people called by Councillor Arnold.
You happy with that, Councillor Arnold?
Yes.
Thank you. So we all know what we're voting for this time, please.
Yeah.
Please vote.
Yes, Paul. Do what you like, David. Do what you like, David.
Yeah, that's 17 votes for and 1 abstention.
Unbelievable. Oh, still
pretty much fantastic.
Okay, thank you for that and for everybody's indulgence. Item 11, local government reorganisation. This is Elizabeth is going to come in on this.
Okay, I'm not hearing very well. Am I okay to proceed, Chair?
Certainly, thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. This is a recommendation to agree the proposed terms of settlement in terms of the Chief Executive Head of Paid Service redundancy. A bit of background, and obviously I know that you will have read the business case and the report. 5 councils, us, Harrogate, Selby, Craven and Richmondshire, have had the same legal advisor. The other 2 councils, Hambleton and Scarborough, have their own legal advisor. What we have decided to do, the 5 councils together, is to have a collective approach in terms of how we deal with our respective chief executives' redundancy. There has been some dispute with North Yorkshire County Council. The view of our legal advisors and that of the other 2 councils and of Alice, the Chief Executives Union, is that chief executives transfer over under a TUPE transfer as a consequence of them being employees of the councils. North Yorkshire County Council were not of that view. However, the 5 councils and their legal advisors have taken the view that it would be appropriate to put forward a settlement to our chief executives, and really the issue about whether they TUPE over or don't TUPE over becomes irrelevant, because the money that they would get in the settlement would be the same whether they TUPE over or not. To not have done anything would have left all of the chief executives in a very difficult position, in that the 31st of March would have come and then we would have said, you know, that's it, we don't exist anymore, take your claim up with North Yorkshire Council, which wasn't the best way to proceed. Our lawyers have been in consultation with North Yorkshire and also with their HR department, and so we therefore put an in principle proposal to them that we would arrange the settlement agreement, and they agreed that they wouldn't make any objection to any section 24 consent that may arise in terms of the settlement agreements to the chief executives. You should be mindful that our chief executive, because of her particular circumstances in terms of her length of continuous service, etc., and you know, sort of her redundancy, is the least amount of all the chief executives that will be paid. Some of them will get a greater settlements. So what we did, in order to have transparency in all of this, the 5 councils and the monitoring officers and our respective auditors, so 4 of the councils have Mazars as their auditors, we have Grant Thornton, we put the business case that is before you to them, also with the report, for their views, and you know, they haven't posed any objection. And we were very mindful to do this because obviously this is public money, and also of the issues that happened in the settlement that went to the York chief executive. In terms of the money that we are proposing as Ryedale to offer in settlement to our chief executive, this is based solely on her legal entitlement under employment legislation. And so this has been calculated, and you can see in the papers the sum of money that will be a proposal. One term and condition of that proposal is that if our chief executive was to accept this payment, she would have to do that on the basis that it would be in full and final settlement of any claims howsoever arising against the New Yorkshire Council. So we have spent a great deal of time doing this. The same report and the same business case is going to all the December full councils of the 5 councils. We just happen to be the first one to put it forward. So, you know, this is showing a real collective approach. Everyone is being dealt with the same, and we feel that this is the fairest way that we can deal with this matter, irrespective of the disagreement that we have about the TUPE issue. So in view of that, I would like to propose that the recommendations set out at 2.1 to 2.3 on the report are approved by council. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any questions of Elizabeth? Been quite clear what been outlined. Councillor 400.
Yeah, my concern is that a 6 month payments in lieu of notice. What concerns me is that the chief executive could on the 1st of April take up another post with North Yorkshire or anywhere else in local government, but basically she's lost nothing and gained a huge amount of money. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to amend the agreements that she's during that 6 months she is not allowed to take up employment in local government. And I make and I ask this question bearing in mind that when members of staff of local authorities normally become redundant and normally get a payoff, particularly if it's early retirement, there is a requirement they don't go back and work in local government again.
Right. Thank you for your question, Councillor Andrews. No, we can't do that. Now, for two reasons. The reason why all of the chief executives are going to get a payment in lieu of notice, in that there is a requirement for them to remain in their post until the 31st of March. And when the government put forward the structural changes order and all the explanatory notes that go along with that, it was not felt fair by, the will of central government that you should have individuals who have the status of chief executive that are losing their very high paid jobs, and obviously with all the skill and experience these individuals have in terms of to actually reach the position of chief executive, and then to deny not only them in terms of a restraint of trade clause, which is what it would be, and also to deny other councils and other organisations the skill of these people. It was not felt appropriate, and so therefore in this particular instance it's very different to an ordinary individual that has a settlement agreement in terms of when their employment ceases, and very often there might be a clause in it, and it's quite a common clause, that you can't work for XYZ for X amount of time. Now these specific restraint of trade clauses have very certain conditions in them, but that is not relevant to the chief executives, and that option has been ruled out in terms of all the legislation that was put in place for a unitary council to be made. So that's not possible. They are having pylon, payment in lieu of notice, because they are expected to work right until the 31st of March. And so therefore, for example, our chief executive, she has a 6 months notice period. Some of them have 3 or 4 months, but it's the legislation from central government that has allowed this to be paid. Also, because there is this very grey issue in the legislation as to whether, the chief exec's TUPE over or not, that we have had external legal advice, all of the councils, that if we were to have issued a notice of redundancy to our chief executives in advance of the 31st of March, this would amount to an unfair dismissal. And so therefore it would have put them in the position whereby they would have then had to have gone to an employment tribunal for an unfair dismissal. And then of course that legal case would have to have been taken on by North Yorkshire Council, because of course we wouldn't exist anymore. But the legislation as drafted in the structural changes order and the explanatory notes have stopped that happening. So it is meant that it is acceptable for the chief executives to have their payment in lieu of notice because of the requirements on them, and also the legal challenge that we would have in terms of employment legislation. In terms of the payment to our chief executive, I have confirmed with the Section 151 officer, who has also reviewed this business case, that the money will come out of LGR funding and not specifically from Ryedale budgets.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. I would like someone to make the recommendation, please. you, councillor Keel, and a seconder, councillor Clark. Thank you. Now we'll go to the votes, please.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'm just so overwhelmed by the 22 hours. So, councillor Potter.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've asked various questions in relation to and have the answers in relation to decisions from central government and legal advice and all the rest of it. And I don't see that there's much that I can quibble with. And what I'm going to say is no reflection on our chief executive or officers, but it is a comment on the higher leadership and government or governance. I've got no reason to doubt that the legal advice, despite the clear conflict between ours and North Yorkshire's, is possibly correct. What we really needed was some precedent in local government reform and how to manage it properly. So what happened in Northumberland, what happened in Cornwall, did nobody notice and take decisions based on that? We knew a couple of years ago that there was going to be vesting day on the 1st of April next year. Why could we not give the chief executive notice on the 30th of September? Most odd. Is it a good use of public money to pay for all 7 chief executives to do no work at all for 6 months? Haven't there been several examples of local government reform for precedent? Why was this not addressed at a higher level? Is this complete incompetence? Financial incompetence? I don't know, but I'm not impressed. But I have little option but to vote for it. As I say, this isn't against the chief executive. This is against the appalling setup that's allowed this to happen. It's a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I too agree that this is an absolute disgrace of public money. It is certainly not our chief executive's fault. She is just part of this system, and she's done a good job for us. And as I say, this is not personal; she's part of the system. The legal advice will be correct, I feel. Employment law is really quite strict, and there's certain processes that you've got to go through, and really, we've got no option. We have no option to do this, so it's a foregone conclusion. But I would like it on record that I absolutely object that this wasn't thought about earlier by the government. I absolutely object that it was a government decision, and I object that they have decided to spend this money unnecessarily. I think that chief executives have got a lot of knowledge, a lot of good knowledge that they can take to North York County Council. I'm not privy at North York County Council. I don't know what the setup will be exactly. And I hope the majority probably keep their jobs. But surely this should have all been planned way back when the government, not the people, the government were deciding to do this. So yes, unfortunately, everyone's struggling, everybody's worried, and then they read in the paper that this is what's happening. So it's not a very good advert. Absolutely object to it. Not a lot we can do. Unfortunately, we've just got to take this medicine.
Councillor Ryedale.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is an indication of how we misled initially to become the new unitary local government. A big thing was cost saving and utilising. This is a, you know, just the pin end of the wedge really. This is the tip of the iceberg, and all this saving that we promised if we dissolve this council, had the new unity council. It was a load of misinformation. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
I'd just like to say I'm sort of a little bit torn on this really, because there's part of me feels, in effect, as our chief executive's employer, that we owe her as much as we can, and we need to sort of thank her for her service, and we need to sort of give all credit where it's due. My understanding from this paper is that we are basically giving her a fairly substantial sum of money. But I'm saying on top because it's also taxpayers' money, and we need to be very critical and aware of the fact that there are people who can't afford to pay money, paying for something that earns a substantial amount to basically do nothing. Yeah, I mean, I think we've got no option to do this because I think this is the right thing to do. It's a shame that it wasn't able to have been sorted out in a way that we were able to utilise this person's knowledge and, you know, pay for the service. I feel like this is sort of the end, and it isn't, but it's, you know, I think Stacey's done a great job, and you know we need to be grateful for her on that. But I don't see what other option that we have other than what's been put forward to us in this paper. I think this is reading it. It feels like there's nothing else that we can do. This is like, you know, what you got to do kind of thing. So yeah.
Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. This is indeed unfortunate, and I don't believe this was ever part of what we expected, transferring to a unitary authority. So let's be clear, under Chupi law, she transfers over as an employee of the new authority. Let's not forget she's already an assistant director in North Yorkshire, and therefore she has a place to go to. She can't go to a lesser place. You're not allowed to do that under Chupi. So therefore, she should just like the rest of the staff Chupi across. She doesn't want to Chupi across, that's her decision. But she should just Chupi across and work it out when she gets there. Sorry, I'm not decrying what she's done or what work she's done while she's been here. That's the Chupi law. Let the Chupi law do what it's supposed to do.
Thank you, Councillor Goodrick. Unfortunately, this was a dispute that we had, and North Yorkshire County Council dispute the fact that chief executives are entitled to Chupi over in accordance with the legislation. And the issue is further complicated because the legislation as drafted is very grey in that area, and also, you know, we had to come to a decision. So North Yorkshire say that chief execs can't Chupi over, they're not going to allow them to Chupi over, and there is no role for them to undertake. And so therefore, this was the only decision that we could make.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Oxley?
Yeah. Completely agree with what Councillor Goodrich just said and with what Councillor Potter said. There was time to sort this. There was notice to do this. I cannot believe the view that North Yorkshire take it. I understand it, but I can't believe it. I hear all Elizabeth says. I just think it is a sad reflection on the way this thing has not been thought through. And I personally will bear that in mind in my thinking about people who've made decisions like this. This is no reflection on our chief executive. She is where she is. And I would not expect her to say Actually, I don't want that because Edith or whatever it might be, she is where she is, and all the others are. But I mean, this is a serious flag waving at people way above that. That, you know, we sit and agonise about, can we spend 20 quid? Can we spend 200 quid? They're going to throw millions of pounds at this that could have been saved with a little bit of thought. It reflects on the government, it reflects on the civil service, and you know, I think the people of Ryedale need to understand. I only hope that, as we all know, we're not going to stop it. I hope we all vote for it rather than just abstain.
Thank you. Anyone else? So it's been proposed, it's been seconded. So we move to this. Thank you.
That's 14 votes for, 1 against, and 4 abstentions.
Item 12A, review and the budget monitoring. This is
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that this item, minute 46, has been superseded by minute 63, so we don't actually need to consider this apart from to select the recommendation to note it.
any questions on that? No questions, so that's just to note. Thank you. Item 12B, delivering the council plan. So it's
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this report details the Part1 performance across the council and provides an update on the delivery of the identified council plan properties, meaning a narrative of what has been started, completed, and superseded. Again, this is another item for council to note, but I have to take motion to it. Thank you.
Item 12C, the revenue and capital budget monitoring. Again, this is
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the summit of the revenue budget, which was approved by council in February this last year. The recommendation from PNR is that council notes the financial position is set out in the paper that provided, and that the over or underspending revenue and capital budgets will have an impact on our reserves. Okay, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
any questions on that? That's just for those as well. Item 12D, Ryedale Swim and Fitness Centre boiler replacement. Against Mr. Keel.
As you talk into policy results, looking for approval for replacement of the boilers at the Ryedale Swim and Fitness Centre to ensure that the work can be delivered in a planned and timely way to reduce the risk of unplanned disruption to the service offered. Basically, the recommendation is to approve £90,000 be allocated from reserves to fund the replacement of 2 boilers at the Ryedale Swim and Fitness Centre, with equivalent gas boilers using the procurement processes already completed for this work. The was quite a discussion at policy resources about this, because again, this is a substantial amount of money for these boilers, but they have been failing for some time. I believe there are 4 boilers in the premises and one of them now no longer functions. There is ongoing uncertainty as to how much longer the remaining boilers will last. So if they were to fail, or another one was to fail, would be the capacity in the boilers to actually make sure that the centre could function on an ongoing basis. And that would in itself bring financial liability from the council, because the operator of the facility wouldn't be able to operate a full service to people. We did look at other options. Obviously, members at PNR did discuss the possibility of yet more green solutions to this rather than boilers. But the issue with that is that I think it's some other matters we need to deal with quite urgently, because if these boilers do fail, as I said, it would be a disruption service for both customers, and we would be liable for some sort of compensation from the operator. So it is quite an urgent issue. If we were to look at things like air source heating, heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, geothermal systems, they have been looked at by officers, but they would actually take quite a lot longer to actually put the whole thing in process to get the heating system up and running to a good level for the customers. So they obviously would have significant larger cost implications than replacing with gas boilers. So happy to take questions.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Andrews.
Is this a legal responsibility of the council, or is it something that's in the contract with everyone active? They should be responsible for.
My understanding is that it is a responsibility of the council.
Councillor Mason.
Yeah, I just to question some of the logic on this. Where was the advice on the renewables coming from? I've just crunched some figures. This is what we do for a living. If you crunch figures in current gas prices, no, below current gas prices, as far as I work it out, you could potentially be saving by putting air source heat pumps in about £700,000 over 5 years, and having air source heat as well. So I'm a bit confused by these figures here, where these are being touted. Yes, they are expensive, but the savings generated from 82,000 kilowatt hours that's being paid at the moment by gas, or from new boilers, from the price of gas at the moment, we will be able to save a fortune by putting renewables in via possibly OPEX contracts. There's lots of contracts out there, and I just wonder what advice has been given, who gave the expert advice on this? I'm not asking for the business, by the way.
Thank you. I think I'm going to have to defer to you on that, if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have that information this evening, I'm afraid. I'll have to come back to you outside the meeting.
Can I just ask a technical question, actually, of Councillor Mason, with your expertise?
Yeah.
Can the aforementioned renewable sources, can they heat to sufficiently high temperature?
As far as I know, if you go to council, you can. Yeah, it is, but that's why you need to have a proper survey done by a company that can do it with the contracts that are lined up. For instance, an example is we can go and put solar on a school, pay for it, and the savings pay for it as well as a management contract. So it can be done in different ways. But this is why I'm a little concerned by the figures. Yeah, I think the point is very expensive to put this stuff in, but it can be done if the savings show that it's worthwhile doing. Because at the end of the day, we're not here to make a profit on it, we're here to make sure it's heated green.
My memory of the PNR meeting was that the building that needs the new heaters is coming to the end of its life, and this is my personal memory. So forgive me for perhaps not quite right, but the gist of the problem was that the operations was going to cost the best part of £1 million or something like that in capital costs. Okay, there will be a saving if I make it. However, the big problem was that the structure that the swimming pool's in is coming to the end of its life, and the viability of the eco-type system was it needed a long run to make it viable. This was what was argued, and therefore this gets over the hump because this is a short-term solution to get a new swimming pool. Those are my memories.
Thank you. Councillor Goodrick.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered when the agreement with everyone active actually comes to an end.
Councillor Goodrick comes to an end on the 31st of March 2025.
Any other questions? Councillor Thackeray.
Might this be a good idea to reintroduce knitted bathing costumes?
You know that's such a company. Right, so no more questions on that. So, Councillor Peel, would you like to move that recommendation, please?
Yes, so I just to say that there are two parts to the recommendation. So £90,000 is allocated from the for the replacement of 2 boilers at the pool and fitness centre. The equivalent of that gas boilers using the serial process that's already been completed for most of the work. And any unforeseen costs, including inflated costs beyond the contingency included, 2.1 above, to a maximum of £25,000 to be agreed and authorised by the Chair of Water Resources. The programme director proposed to for 151 by 20 attention costs. I'd like to move that recommendation.
Councillor Mason.
I'd like to add, please, to actually that we can ensure that the boilers being installed are compliant with the new technologies coming forward, like hydrogen or green gas, for instance, like they have been at Malton School. So it's that I would view that if we're going to recommend these gas boilers, let's make sure that they can be converted as quick as possible to renewable sources.
Would you like to move that as a recommendation?
I'd like to make that to them.
Would you like to give Nicky?
Would that have any implication on the cost that's already in there, though? No.
Malton School have already done it, they're all doing it.
Is this going to delay?
Going back to both questions being asked, I'm not involved in the technicality of this particular scheme. I am slightly concerned if this recommendation is moved and agreed that there could, only saying could, that there could be an impact on both cost and deliverability. I don't know the answer to that, I'm just flagging it as a potential risk here.
Councillor Byrne?
I have every sympathy with the proposal, but is it an amendment? If it's an amendment that needs seconding, then we need to debate it. I have every sympathy, but I am quite worried that, we'll be swimming in freezing cold water. So, I'm quite worried.
I'm also concerned that if the pumps don't work and the place has to close, whether it'll mean up again. Because there's a lot of swimming pools, etc., that are closing around the country.
Because of the cost of gas. And we're about to put gas boilers in.
Just from a practicality point of view, one of the, I believe in the Quality and Resources meeting that there are 2 boilers, each of which has 2 modules in it, and one of the modules and one of the boilers has failed. How practical is it to replace one of the boilers, the one that's got the broken module in, and therefore give ourselves a little bit of time to come back, get a report on the feasibility of putting in a renewable solution. But we've then got 100% capacity on the heating for the period of time that we have to do that. It's cost us half of the money that would also give us potentially, I think there's a 75% decarbonisation of public services grant that may be available for us as well.
Legislation for the change anyway.
I think my understanding of why he's doing now is that one of the boilers has failed, but the others are being kept going by a bit of, sort of just managing to keep them going, but they are all on their way out. So I think if we repaired one, potentially another one could go the next week. So we still have a reduction in service in the public. So I think we need to actually get the job done as a complete job.
That's on Mason.
I think I'd just like to clarify what I mean by this. This is industry standard practice to install boilers that can be ready for the hydrogen economy. That's supposed to be coming as government policy. I worry actually there may be legislation here. We may have to replace them soon anyway, because as far as I know, home boilers are about to be banned in 2025 with gas. And so I think that 2030, but it's coming. What I'm worried about here is actually we may have to replace these anyway because of government legislation. All it is a simple valve in the boiler that's converted from burning one gas to another type of gas. It's the same boiler. It's just a valve, and you're going to have it on your cookers. You're going to have it in your heating systems. It's coming down the line. And just by putting the recommendation in, it's not going to increase the capital costs significantly, because otherwise, Malta School wouldn't have done it. They would have done exactly the same type of organisation, and they've got it, and they've done it into boilers that are ready to go when the gas is ready.
Thank you. Councillor Thackeray.
Well, number one, are you moving an amendment on that?
I have already.
Oh, you have already. Could I just suggest that we vote to repair the boiler that's broken and then let North Yorkshire County Council deal with it, because we're not going to be around when they're spending big money on it.
Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Just checking. Is it, I mean, in debate on this, having been second.
I think it has been second.
Oh.
No. Well, Chair, so we're debating something that's not even on the books.
Yeah. I apologise. Right, let's do the initial recommendation then. So Councillor Keel's proposed it. Sorry, I was under the misinterpretation because I thought you went to second it, Councillor Mason, but then you added.
I'm the second.
And then we asked if Councillor Mason wanted to put an amendment.
Right, so Councillor Ryby seconded it. Thank you. So Councillor Mason's amendment needs to be addressed then. That's.
I was just going to say, rather than go through having another amendment scenario for might it be worth us just actually checking with the people that have put the scheme together for us, just to check whether it does, because if we're all aware that this is going to happen in home environment, then they're probably aware that this is going to happen with commercial environments. So they may already have done it, but it may just not be recorded in the report, just rather than going through it. Yeah.
So do we defer the item?
Suggested. Chair, no. Okay. The motion has been put forward, it's been seconded, an amendment has been